The trucking industry as we know it is about to go through some massive changes in the next few months and maybe up into the next year or so. You've got to be prepared for these changes. In this video, I'm going to give you some steps as to how to survive this slump in the trucking industry. Number one, this is not the time to lease. If there was ever a worse time to lease, it's now. Carriers will be looking extra hard to lease trucks out at this point because they want to bolster their income through this period when freight slows down. The easiest way for carriers to do that is to lease more trucks, and you do not want to be in that situation, signing a new lease on a new truck weeks before the freight dive bombs and stays down for God knows how long. You don't want to be in that position. This is absolutely the worst time to lease a truck. So you've heard me say before, when it comes to leasing a truck from your carrier, don't walk away, run. Man, never has this been truer than this period right now, because no one can predict what the freight's going to do for the upcoming months, but everyone knows it's going to slump. They don't know just how far it's going to slump, bottom line. So you don't want to be beholden to a carrier that has no freight but still wants their truck payment, and you can't even maintain the thing because you're hardly getting any miles. So, number one, this is the worst time to get into a lease deal with a carrier. Number two, even if you're an owner-operator and you're considering replacing your old equipment for new equipment, once again, this is not the time to be buying a new truck or trailer, because once again, you don't know what the market's going to do to your bottom line or how much of a market there's going to be left to operate in. So don't be replacing equipment at this time. Hang on to what you've got, repair it if you need to, and keep on going. But this is not a good time to invest in a new piece of equipment, because there is no certainty in the market, and you don't know from one day to the next whether you'll be able to get loads or freight or work or however it's going to be. So hang on to the equipment you've got. The third thing you all need to do is keep an eye on your carrier. You've got to focus on how they're managing through this crisis. If you're into a company that hauls essential goods like food, for instance, reefer work, food grade tankers, that type of thing, you're probably going to be all right. But all sorts of trucking companies now are starting to suffer from that freight loss, and you've got to keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't affect your paycheck. So watch to make sure your paychecks aren't late. Watch to make sure your paychecks are correct and they're not low. Your carriers through this period should be paying you extra money as bonus money for operating in this COVID environment. And that's what you want to see. But if you're working for a carrier that's starting to cut routes, cut corners, cut pay, drop equipment, lowball you on your pay statements, that's a sign that these guys are in trouble. And you want to get out of there before they end up going down and you lose a paycheck or two over the deal. You don't want to be involved in a sell-it-on situation. So number three is keep an eye on what your carrier is doing, what they're hauling, what's going on, and look for signs that they're in financial trouble. You should have a backup plan through this period. Get ready to jump because you might need to. The bottom line is you've got to keep your pay coming in, whether they can or not. Number four, load brokers. Stay away from load brokers at this point, or as they like to call themselves, logistics agents or carriers or companies. No, they're not carriers, but you got to stay away from these guys right now, especially because these guys are basically middlemen between the manufacturers and the trucking. So if the freight starts to slump, and it has already started, these guys are going to be struggling for freight to maintain their bottom line. And the first guy they're going to throw to the wolves, because they need their brokerage to survive. So the first guy they're going to throw to the wolves are going to be the truck drivers. And they'll pay them late or not pay them at all. And you don't want to be in this situation either, because in times like this, you need to be able to rely on your money coming in. And if you're involved with a load broker, there's absolutely no guarantee that you're going to get paid. And you know, load brokers like to say, oh, we've been around in business for 50 years. We've got a great reputation. You know what? Reputation doesn't pay the bills. If you've absolutely got to pull a load broker load, ask for prepayment. And if these guys are as golden and has been around as long as they say, and they're as solid a company as they say, they shouldn't have any trouble prepaying you because they should have that money in the bank. They're supposed to have a surety bond there anyway. So ask for prepayment if you absolutely have to pull a load broker load. But my advice is to get away from the load brokers. They're a weak link in the chain when it comes to getting paid. And bottom line, you got to get paid. Number 5, if you're an independent through this period, this is a good time to have some extra face time with your customers. Now, chances are, if you're still surviving in this market as an independent, you and your customers have an excellent working relationship. Still, it's a good time to sit down with them and say, you know, how does this look to you the upcoming months? What are you predicting for yourselves? Do you expect the freight to drop off? How do you picture this going? Just to give you an idea. And they'll know why you're asking, because you're trying to take care of your own little company here. You need security. So, and if they say, you know, you might want to look around just in case, you should prepare yourself with backup loads, connections, stuff like that. Other customers, if you can get them through this point, because nothing is a sure thing anymore. And if you're an independent, like everybody else, you need to survive, you need to put money on the table. This is all about protecting yourself. That's the bottom line, because you don't want your income affected. Don't get into a new leasing program with the carrier. Number 2, if you're an owner-operator, don't be buying new equipment at this point. Number 3, assess your carrier and keep an eye on his finances so you know you're going to get paid. Number 4, stay away from load brokers. And number 5, if you're an independent, some extra face time with your customer. If you need to jump and find another carrier, remember, one essential is always going to be food. People are always going to need food no matter what, so you might want to look at a reefer outfit or a food grade tanker or something like that. There's job security in that, even when the freight is bottoming out. Something else you've got to worry about, for instance, or if you're hauling auto parts, or if you're running flatbed freight, things are not looking good for these 2 areas. So you may want to keep an eye out. If you're doing that stuff now, you might want to consider swapping to reefer or something like that. So, kind of a tough talk video. Hard to keep track of how everyone's spirits are doing these days. So I've got a story, bit of a lighthearted story. So we'll lighten the mood a little, and I'll tell you this. Back, I don't know how many years ago, I was working for a carrier, and they did a lot of just-in-time freight, and I have a problem with that anyway, as you probably know, but they got this call. They had a rush auto parts load, and it had to fly overnight. It had to move, I forget what it was doing, like 900 miles straight down, had to take off now. They were running out of parts at this auto plant place, and I believe it was in Corbin, Kentucky. So anyway, they called in a team, and we didn't even run teams really, this carrier, but he called his wife. She had a license, the guy that was going to take the load. His wife came down, she hopped in the truck, they gave him the trailer number and the paperwork. They hopped in their truck, they pinned up to the trailer and took off like a pair of headed for Corbin, Kentucky. The weather was bad, the wind was howling, they drove all night, they didn't stop. They just sailed down there, made great time too. Got to the customer, got set up, backed in the doors, opened the trailer doors, no product. They never checked the trailer to make sure the load was in there. They never even checked the seal on the back of the trailer to see if it was sealed. And the paperwork that the carrier had given them had the right trailer number on it. They'd pinned up to the right trailer. It's just the carrier had kind of forgotten to load the trailer. What do you say? There was an 1,800 mile round trip for nothing. Now, the carrier was a good carrier. It paid the driver and his wife the team rate to do the round. It was the carrier's screw up. But talk about being embarrassing for everybody involved. Being in front of the customer, opening up your doors and you've got an empty trailer. Like, how embarrassing is that for the driver, his wife, and the carrier, and how mad was the shipper at the whole deal? We ended up losing the contract over that deal. So, funny story with not too funny an ending, but stuff like that happens, and that's why you've got to pay attention. Keep your head in the game all the time. Stay safe, keep the rubber side down, I'll see you on the back haul.